I actually want to take issue with the title of the session, which was Formal Credentials or Community Connections, because I'm just not sure who's here to speak against community connections. It ain't me. And by a show of hands, how many of you all would agree with me that when staff have connections to community, that's an asset? Okay, good. So, resolve, okay. I win. So that's an issue on which there's consensus, and actually there's increasing consensus on the broader question of what are the competencies and skills that staff need in the system. And the question for us is, what do we do to make sure that the kids in the least sophisticated programs still get the highest quality staff? And there actually isn't an easy answer to that question. Obviously, that's what we're talking about today. I think that it does come down to, in the end, at least in part, to making sure that we have a way to recognize and incentivize professional development. Now, as far as recognition, if we want the workforce to be able to move ahead in this profession, then they have to be able to get some sort of acknowledgement of their training that is permanent and portable and universally recognized. It so happens that college credits fit all those criteria, but that is not the only solution that I want to focus on today, because it's not perfect and there are challenges and even risks in working with higher ed. But I hope we'll talk about higher ed and about non-college solutions as well. As for incentives, probably the easiest way to make sure that our staff actually go out and do the training is to pay them for their hours, pay them for the time in which they spend in workshops. That is not an option for providers which have limited resources. And if you look at other fields, solutions generally include some sort of salary structure that rewards training and credentialing with either an increase in responsibility or a better title or a higher wage. That's true in a limitless number of other professions, and is true in a very limited respect in some forward-looking providers in our field. But there's also cost involved there. But in the end, you create what we call a career track or a career ladder, which gives workers a sense that they can move ahead in this field if they invest in their own development. Now, in thinking about the future of credentialing and professional development in our sector, we have the advantage of learning from a couple very closely related professions that have gone before us by a decade or two, including early childhood and also traditional teaching. And their experiences have not been without challenge. And I think that's, in a sense, good for us because we can learn from their mistakes. And talking about early childhood for a minute, and there's others in the room which are experts in this, which we'll draw upon. But I want to identify two lessons from that sector that I think we have to internalize. And the first is that it's not enough simply to mandate additional training if there is not commensurate salary increases, because then you've given people the credentials to go out and get a higher paying job. And you're actually going to contribute to attrition and turnover. And that has happened quite frequently in early childhood. Secondly, any solution that we implement must be applicable to the workers who are already in place. We can't envision a system where we kick everyone out and bring new people in. So we've got to take the existing staff and help bring them up to our standards. And that didn't happen as much in early childhood as it should. As for traditional teaching, actually there was a great article in the New York Times yesterday about a new look at master's programs in teaching. Did anyone see that by chance? Well, the gist is that there's a consensus now that ed school has failed the teaching profession. And that's largely because it's been overly theoretical and that it hasn't focused on, believe it or not, actually preparing teachers to walk into the classroom in practical ways. And there are emerging leaders within the school, teacher preparation, schools of teacher preparation that are beginning to totally turn and focus entirely on practical skills that will help prepare teachers for work in the classroom. And as after-school leaders, we need to do exactly the same thing as we work with higher ed. We need content that is developed by and delivered by practitioners in the field so that it's directly relevant to what they do tomorrow afternoon when they walk in to their group of young people. I'm running out of time, and so what I want to do in the last 60 seconds I have is to identify some of the principles I think that we now have learned from similar fields and from early work in our sector. And then as we continue this discussion, we'll talk about some of the solutions that are percolating up. And the principles that I want to identify that I think have to be part of any credentialing system are, one, that it has to focus on incentives, not mandates. Two, that it has to preserve staff diversity. By that I don't just mean ethnic diversity, but we have staff who are themselves parents from the communities, and maybe were young people in our programs not too long ago, as well as people who are in college students, et cetera. And we want to continue that wonderful mix. Third is that we want to make it easy for existing staff to earn these credentialing, as I mentioned. And the last principle I mentioned is that we want to avoid placing additional burdens on providers that are already stretched pretty thin. And so I'm going to leave it there and just say I think if we can find solutions that live up to these goals, then we're going to go a long way towards making sure that every young person in an after-school program in America is served by a high-quality staff and gets enriching experiences. Thank you very much.